So, picture this. February 28th, 2026. An event unfolds that doesn't just shake the Middle East, it rattles the entire globe. A leader who defined his country for nearly 4 decades was suddenly and violently gone. In this explainer, we're going to break down the assassination of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. It really boils down to this one stark fact. After 37 years holding on to power, Ali Khamenei, the longest-serving head of state in the entire Middle East, was killed. I mean, his reign was the constant in modern Iranian history. And just like that, it was over. So, how did this all actually go down? Well, those first 24 hours were just pure chaos. It all started in the wee hours of the morning, Eastern Time, when reports of major U.S. and Israeli strikes hitting Tehran began to surface. For hours, nobody knew what was going on. Then, that afternoon, rumors started flying when an Israeli official told Reuters that Khamenei's body had been found. But Iran was flat out denying it. It wasn't until early the very next morning in Tehran that Iranian state media finally confirmed it. The supreme leader was dead. And look, this wasn't just about one man dying. This was the curtain falling on an entire era. An era that literally shaped the Middle East we know today. And let's be really clear about what this was. This was a targeted decapitation strike, a joint U.S.-Israeli operation aimed right at the heart of his power, his compound in Tehran. For 37 years, he had been the final say on every single major decision in Iran. And just like that, in a few short hours, all of that power, gone. Okay, so to really get a handle on why his death is such a big deal, you have to understand the man himself. Who was Ali Khamenei before he was the all-powerful supreme leader? Let's rewind the clock a bit. Now, this quote, it's straight from Khamenei's own official biography. He was very careful to build this image of himself, the humble beginnings, the life of poverty. And as you can tell from his own words, this whole story of piety and hardship, it was totally central to the face he showed the world. But, behind that carefully crafted story was a stone-cold revolutionary. He wasn't just a follower of Ayatollah Khamenei, he was one of his most dedicated disciples. A major player in the '79 revolution. The Shah's regime saw him as such a threat that they erected him 6 separate times and even exiled him for 3 years. He even survived an assassination attempt back in 1981 that left his right arm paralyzed for the rest of his life. So yeah, this guy wasn't just some quiet scholar. He was a survivor, forged in the fires of real conflict. And that same revolutionary fire? Well, that's exactly what he brought to his reign, for almost 4 decades as Iran's most powerful man. 37 years. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. He came to power back in 1989. That means whole generations of Iranians have never known another supreme leader. His word shaped everything. For millions and millions of people, both inside Iran and way beyond its borders. So you gotta ask, how did he hold on to power for that long? Well, it really boiled down to 4 main pillars. First up, he locked down his own absolute religious authority. Second, he juiced up the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, making them this massive military and economic power that answered only to him. Third, he built this whole network of proxy forces across the region. And finally, the big one, he never stopped pushing for a nuclear program. And that third point, the axis of resistance, that was an absolutely crucial piece of his foreign policy puzzle. Think about it from a strategic point of view. It was a way to project power and fight wars without a direct confrontation. It's basically this coalition of governments and militant groups, all united by their anti-Western and anti-Israeli stance, all looking to Tehran for leadership. This network was his way of projecting power, giving Tehran a huge amount of influence way beyond its own borders and making Iran a key player in conflicts from Syria all the way to Yemen. All right, now the whole nuclear issue. This was always a bit of a paradox, right? On one hand, Khamenei issues this official religious decree, a fatwa, saying that making nuclear weapons is forbidden, that it's against Islam. But on the other hand, Iran's nuclear program just kept chugging along, always getting right up to the line of having a bomb, but never quite crossing it. It was a way to keep the West on its toes, constantly creating this state of tension. So when the news finally officially broke that he was dead, the reaction inside Iran wasn't just one thing. Not at all. In fact, it perfectly mirrored the nation he'd ruled for so long. A country completely and profoundly split right down the middle. And I mean, the reaction was instant and just worlds apart. On one side, you had the state declaring 40 days of mourning. You saw these images of his supporters just weeping in the streets, collapsing in grief. But then, on the complete other side of the coin, you had videos popping up online of Iranians literally celebrating, cheering in the streets, with some even pulling down a statue of him. It's just such a powerful visual split, right? A country torn in two. And that same division, it wasn't just inside Iran. It played out all over the world. The United States was celebrating, calling it justice. Argentina praised the move, blaming Khamenei for sponsoring terrorism. But then you had Russia and China, who came out swinging, condemning it as a cynical murder and a violation of international law. And right in the middle, you had the European Union, striking this more cautious, hopeful note, calling it a defining moment. So, what about that axis of resistance we talked about, his proxies? Well, as you can probably guess, they were all on the same page, furious and vowing revenge. Hezbollah and Lebanon called it the height of crime and promised they'd retaliate. Hamas mourned him as their main supporter. The Houthis in Yemen sent their condolences. I mean, for them, losing their biggest backer was a total disaster. So, Khamenei's gone, and what he leaves behind is this enormous power vacuum, which leads, of course, to the billion-dollar question. What happens now? Okay, so the moment his death was confirmed, Iran's constitutional playbook was opened. And this is key. Khamenei never officially named a successor. So an interim leadership council had to be formed right away. Their job? Basically, keep the lights on and manage this incredibly tricky process of picking the next supreme leader. And so for now, these are the three guys in the driver's seat. Iran's president, the chief justice, and a top cleric from the Assembly of Experts, the group that actually chooses the next leader. These three now hold the future of Iran in their hands, at least for the time being. You can bet that behind the scenes, different factions within the regime are already scrambling, trying to position themselves to take permanent control. And all of this brings us back to that one huge final question. This 37-year era, a period defined almost entirely by the will of one man, is over. So what's Iran's next chapter going to be? Are those celebrations we saw in the streets going to explode into a new revolution? Or will the cries from his supporters turn into violent revenge? Right now, nobody knows. And that's the question hanging not just over Iran, but really over the entire world.